Hello, everyone. It's another episode of Boomer Has It. I'm Jim Jalamas in New York.
I'm JB Miller in London.
Listeners, here's a little quiz. Can you remember 9/11? Can you remember the Florida ballot count? How about the Sex Pistols or Farm Aid or the Iran hostage crisis or even, God forbid, the mile marker of our age, the Kennedy assassination? The question is, do boomers have this gift of hindsight that causes them to be overcritical? We, as boomers, used to be rule the demographic roost when our population peaked at 80 million people in 1998. Now millennials, those are ages 29 to 44, constitute the dominant cohort with a population of 72 million. JB Miller, any thoughts on that?
Well, I guess we're not the big guys in town anymore. There's a stronger cultural element that it would behoove us to listen to and read and watch. We should be aware of the culture of the subsequent generations. Um, I think a lot of younger people up until maybe fairly recently felt that our generation were shoving our culture down their throats, and I think that may be true to some extent. So we're trying to keep our antennae open and clear to what's happening in the culture today. And to that end, you found a book, a new novel that you recommended to me. We both read it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it, what it is?
It's a book called Lost Lambs. The author is Madeline Cash, who is 29 years old, which puts her between the Gen Z and millennial generations. She's co-founder of the literary publication Forever Magazine, the author of a great short story collection called Earth Angel, and the subject of our podcast, the 2026 novel Lost Lambs, released in late January by Macmillan in the US and Penguin in the UK. Why do UK and US books have different publishers?
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, when you asked that earlier, I checked to see if Penguin was a separate publisher, because of course there are something like 5 major publishing houses that have swallowed up all these other imprints. And so it could have been they sounded like there were 2 different publishers when they were under the same umbrella, but they are two different publishers. I think a literary agent would probably want to sell. I think it depends on the deal. It may be in the author's interest to sell separate the rights, European rights, UK rights from the US rights. I don't know. It's a different deal. You'd think they'd.
Probably different legal jurisdictions too. The rules that govern royalties in the U.S. are probably different from the rules that govern royalties in the U.K. Could that be it? I'm speculating, spitballing again, just like a boomer.
The same royalty rates. It's just be about the advance, really. I guess. I don't know.
Ooh, I like this publishing talk.
The covers
so sexy.
The covers are always different. And in the old days, British publishers issued much more interesting art cover design than American publishers. That's probably changed now. But I've noticed sometimes the UK edition can have either a much better or much worse cover. Zadie Smith's last book, I'm trying to remember what the name of it was, and the most appalling cover in the UK, and it was much nicer in the US. But that's a completely different deal. Lost Lambs. What did you think of Lost Lambs?
Well, before we get to that, let me just finish that. The reason we talked about demographics earlier was this is just basically an all caps disclaimer as we discussed Lost Lambs, because Madeline Cash, her at age 29, her era defining moments would be possibly the 2008 financial crisis or the launch of the iPhone.
Yeah, right. How old
or
would she have been?
COVID-19, because these are analog, our analog milestones.
Yeah, how old would she
But
have
the
been?
20th century,
Wow.
they're strictly academic to someone like her.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to figure out how. I mean, 9/11, which was really a defining moment for New Yorkers, which she would have been 4 or 5. That would have been as much of an event, unless she grew up in New York. Where is she from? No, she's not from New York. She moved to New York? So that would have been, if she'd been 4 or 5 in New York, she would have been very aware of that event. But if you're that age somewhere else, that would have been very, just kind of background noise.
Now she's a very sharp observer of our culture. Do you want to give a rundown of the plot, the story?
No, you give a run. It's
Your rundown was great during rehearsal, our rehearsal session.
Oh God, it's well, okay. It's a comic novel. It's a very funny book. It's a Catholic family, dysfunctional family. The parents are separated. The father's living in a minivan in the front drive. There are 3 teenage daughters. They're completely different from each other. They all have different issues. Um, the local Catholic Church figures in the plot. Um, I found it very funny book. That gives you, that doesn't give you that just gives you the background, not the setup or the plot particularly.
No, I mean it gets us in place, and it's also interesting to note, I think, that if you read, a review of reviewers would reveal many different takes on the book. Some have called it a family saga, which sounds a little highfalutin for what it is. Some people call it a systems novel because everything's a little bit off. The world is a little bit different, but it's interesting how you identify it, which I think reviewers, if I may be so kind to you, should take note.
Well, I thought it was I thought it worked very well as a comic novel, which I consider a genre, and it's a British genre. Comic novel is more I think is a more accepted form in the UK, because we have a tradition here of great comic novelists like Evelyn Waugh and P.G. Wodehouse and Kingsley Amis, who have never been out of print. All their books have always been in print. In some bookstores here even have a section that's designated for comic novels. I don't know how many bookshops in America would have a section like that. So I celebrate it as a comic novel more so than a literary novel, and I don't think it's fair to judge it purely on literary terms. I think the comic novel is a tough act to pull off. I noticed that some reviewers called it an internet novel, which I thought was an absurd term. As if The Great Gatsby would have been described as a telephone novel, because someone answered the phone in it. The new technology at the time was Pride and Prejudice a stagecoach novel, because that was the new transportation of the time. It's not an internet novel. It's a comic novel. Leave it at that, and it succeeds, I think, very well on those terms.
Do you think when the ballpoint pen came around, they called novels ballpoint pen novels?
Ballpoint pen novels, yeah.
After the inkwells of yore. Yeah, so what makes it a comic novel is also what makes it a little bit surreal. And let's go down the line. For example, they live in a community called Alabaster Harbor. Every time that name comes up, there's a trademark signature after it.
Yeah.
There are shops in their community. Instead of a Baskin Robbins or Cold Stone Creamery, we have Anne Frank's Dairy. Get it? Anne Frank's Dairy.
Yeah, skirting the edge of taste there. She quickly follows it up by claiming that the ice cream store donates a certain percentage of its profits to anti-Semitic causes. No, fighting anti-Semitic causes. I think to lighten that joke a little bit. So she or her sensitivity reader may have felt that was just skirting the edges of taste. What were some of the other names of there's a what's the name of that bar? That saloon
It's
bar.
a 19th century themed bar called
The
Olive
Olive
or
or Twist.
Twist.
The
Olive or Twist.
yeah. And
Um,
what about the pasta? The Italian restaurant.
Lucky Penne.
Yeah,
Ha ha!
yeah, they're all kind of the kind of puns you'd see in Bob's Burgers or The Simpsons. It's kind of making fun of is he making fun of suburbia? I guess it's satirizing suburbia. Why not? It's a great long. There's a long tradition of satirizing suburbia without. I don't think it belittles. Suburbia.
It's a thin line when you're belittling the suburbs, or because the writer is on high somewhere making a judgment, and does it enable us to laugh at ourselves, or are we laughing at other people? I was reading the Vulture review, and the critic called it hammy hilarity. And
Hmm.
what I get from that is that sometimes when I was reading the novel, I felt moments of insensitivity that offended me.
Oh, really?
And
I didn't. Which one?
well, like we just mentioned, the Anne Frank's dairy seemed just a little beyond taste. And you're right, she solved it by saying all the money goes
Well,
someplace.
she thought she solved it. She didn't. She didn't in your case. I mean,
In
there
my
probably,
case,
yeah. So there probably are people who were uh, offended by that. That was probably the most extreme case of offense that I noticed in the book. Is there anything else? It kind of
yeah, what I mentioned before is there's a child who wears noise canceling earphones. This child is kind of an important character, and she repeatedly describes the child Perry as brain damaged. Um,
well, I did. Yeah, the
I
terms.
that
It's
seems
not a woke term. I don't know. That to me is kind of semantics. But you're the more sensitive one of our duo. I appreciate that. I'm the more insensitive um, reader, perhaps. Um, those kind of terms I don't trip over those terms as much as some other people would. But that's where we are in the culture, where we're not sure which terms are acceptable now. 5 years ago, that would have been maybe more, what's a slightly condemned term than now. I don't know. I don't know where we are in the culture with these sort of terminology.
I know it's sort of like sometimes there's a deliberately blunt narration, um, and I think it's a little bit, I know, sort of fleeing the strictures of contemporary culture. She's sort of declaring herself free of having to
I
say mentally challenged or
I,
some
I would
softer language, but to me it comes off as a little bit crude.
yeah, I would give her. I mean, this is just on pure age terms. I'd probably give her the benefit of the doubt because she's 29. If it was someone in their 60s writing this book, maybe I'd be a bit more worried that that term was not in use.
Right.
So I kind of, you know, maybe that's punting the baseball. Maybe that's dribbling the ping pong ball there.
Look, that's to say she's a very skillful writer. She's incredible at writing dialogue. Some of the best dialogue I've seen in literally decades.
Wow,
Um, there's a
decade.
great scene where one of the daughters participates in a beauty contest at church called the Inner Beauty Contest.
I mean, that's just funny in itself, isn't it?
It sure is. And so her skill is that she can hold her breath. And
Until
and
she
it's
passes out.
interesting, something that passive is makes a very, she somehow made a very dramatic sequence out of it, because yeah, she passes out and it's kind of a countdown. So I find the book really clever and well wrought, despite those moments where it seems to lack compassion. And then um,
I think you care for these characters. I think you care for all the characters, with the exception of the villains. There's one very slightly overstated James Bond like villain who does talk like a Bond villain, and I think he's a slightly satirical character. We don't like him particularly. But don't you think it's a very, and that's one of the things I liked about the book, was I found it very, very empathetic writing, which I personally appreciate, when the writer shows empathy towards all of his or her or their characters.
You make a good point there, that there's, without giving too much away, there's the ending, I think, is heartfelt and very satisfying.
Yeah.
Once you get through the fluctuations and the heart and soul of the story. I felt like there were undeveloped characters. It almost felt sometimes like I was reading a screenplay where an actor will eventually make that character more three-dimensional. I felt the horrible neighbor was kind of flat. The Bond villain, Paul Alabaster, who's a cross between Jeffrey Epstein and Peter Thiel.
Mr. Burns.
The lesbian contractor, funny as she was, she had very few lines, and mostly they were yes sir or yes ma'am.
Yes,
Reminded me of a Charles Schultz character who would always mistakenly say yes sir to Lucy.
Yes. I think a lot of the book, or some of the book, felt a little written in shorthand, and I think when just talking about the book earlier, we both kind of compared it to animated series. I mentioned Bob's Burgers and The Simpsons, so it had a bit of that, so kind of satire, almost cartoon satire. Is that fair? Is that a term? Is that a genre?
I think it's true. I think it's, and also I think it's a first novel, and so we read first novels like we look at newborn babies. We think about all the potential in the future, and I think if I were a mean reviewer, I'd say, the youngest Harper is just another Lisa Simpson, and I'd say Paul Alabaster is another Bond villain. But I guess the point I'm making is, if my complaints were like that with the latest George Saunders or Zadie Smith or even Percival Everett, I'd say these authors should know better. That's sort of my boomerish reaction.
Should know better in what sense?
That, like, again, some of the complaints I have about the sort of the comic or surreal aspects of the book that make me uncomfortable or make me feel
which
like.
book are you talking? Are you talking about
Lost Lambs? Lost Lambs. But, there's another thing where we haven't talked about yet, but it's an important feature of the book, is she does a little, I wouldn't call it wordplay, I'd call it spelling play. The church is beset by gnats. So throughout the book, whenever a word comes up using the N, or not whenever, often, an N spelled word she replaces with GN. Like the word natural begins with a G.
No, it's not. It's any word that is spelled with an NAT in it, like national.
Oh, wow.
That's what it is. It's consistent in that regard until the gnats are vanquished from the church, and she removes that G. I found that a stylistic tick that was a bit too cute for my taste. And I just felt for the proofreader having to make a note of not correcting, so hyper correcting a stylistic tick in the book. That didn't work for me because it was inconsistent with the rest of the style of the book. But I certainly give it to the author. I want to go back to you were complaining about George Saunders and Zadie Smith and other writers.
Percival Everett.
Percival Everett.
Maybe Gary Steingart.
What's your? I didn't understand what your criticism is.
Well, I'm saying in contrast to a first novelist, these are authors who have many books behind them, and some of the my complaints that I attribute to Madeline Cash being a younger writer, I would not give the same slack to those writers.
Oh,
And incidentally, those writers, I think, do fit into the category of being comic writers.
yeah. Okay. All right. Well, here's a question. So, Madeline Cash is what is she? A millennial, or is she
I think we
generation
said a millennial or in
millennial?
between
I mean,
millennial and Gen Z.
are millennials? This might be an impossible question. Are millennials a rather serious generation? I don't want you to sum up an entire generation, but I guess I asked that because I just really welcomed this comic novel from a generation that I thought could sometimes seem a little serious, just because the world's falling apart. They seem to have no sense of humor about things. You know, the world that we're leaving them is in a bit of a mess, and we have a president who unfortunately shares our generation. He's just gets into the boomer generation. He's screwing up the entire planet. But
Could we kick him out of our cohort? Say,
yeah,
you're no longer welcome here.
we'll make him a silent member of the silent generation.
We're moving you to another generation.
Yes, we're going to physically extract him from our generation. Are there many comic novels of that generation? Can you think of any other really? I mean, books as funny as this one, and this book is really funny.
I really can't. I can't think of a comic novel.
All those other writers are older Zadie Smith and
Absolutely.
whatever.
They sure
they're
are.
a different generation. Maybe the difference is that generation, our generation, grew up on a lot of comic novels, and it could be people of Madeline Cash's generation are not reading P.G. Wodehouse, Evelyn Waugh, Kingsley Amis, Joe Heller, Kurt Vonnegut. I mean, those were funny writers.
There's definitely a Venn diagram with Joe Heller, Kurt Vonnegut, and Madeline Cash. There's some.
Ooh, what is it?
Those concentric circles. There's a certain level of absurdism introduced into everyday life. Like the names of, I think there was a mall store that they would visit in the book called Helter Seltzer.
Helter Seltzer, yes, right.
Not the world isn't exactly as it should be. The way it isn't in a Kurt Vonnegut novel, or a level of absurdity in a Joseph Heller novel. They share and they overlap.
But why when I was reading Lost Lambs did I think of The Simpsons and Bob's Burgers? When I read Catch 22 or Slaughterhouse-Five, I don't think of a cartoon. It doesn't seem. It does. It is absurdist. Catch 22 is certainly absurdist, but it's grounded in in the sort of
in the war.
Ups, in the war. So it's got. So is Slaughterhouse-Five. This got a very heavy sort of ballast to it, a grounding to it. There's nothing as serious or as life-threatening in Lost Lambs as there is in Slaughterhouse-Five, which is about the bombing of Dresden, the firebombing of Dresden, and Catch 22, which is about the Pacific.
I think, and it's interesting too, because I think you could call Catch 22 a satire of military life, and I don't think. I think you could call Lost Lambs a satire of suburban life. That's what it's satirizing: family, home, employment, schooling.
Do you remember a film called Nebraska? I forget the name of a very good director. Maybe Alexander
Payne.
Alexander Payne, and it got highly celebrated. I'm a big fan of Alexander Payne's work, and I hated that film. I hated that film because I thought maybe against what he was trying to do, it felt really making fun of the people in Nebraska, where he's from. So he feels he had ownership over satirizing, his own hometown. or maybe he didn't see it as satirizing, and I felt it was a low blow, kind of referring to what you said earlier about some, there's some people can make fun of suburbia in a way that I don't think.
I had a similar
No.
reaction to a current series on HBO Max. HBO Max, Max HBO. It's called DTF St. Louis. It's drawing a lot of attention. You'll find
Brand
reviews.
new, just came out a few
And
weeks ago.
yeah, and my experience is that it's a little bit, I wouldn't call it cruel, but it's making fun of people in the suburbs in a way
Is it
that's
broad? Is it a bit broad?
it's not that it's broad. It's a little bit like, kind of low blows at people who live in the suburbs. And I left the suburbs for, maybe the reasons people like to criticize it. But I felt defensive towards those characters. I think it was a little unkind towards the characters in the show. The same way I think in the movie Nebraska. And that's sort of an interesting take is someone who creates, an author or a director or a screenwriter, what is their attitude towards their characters? Are they being unnecessarily cruel? That sometimes happens, and it's such a turnoff for me as a viewer, and I think for you also.
It's a turnoff. It's a turnoff to me, because my feeling is, if the writer doesn't care for their own characters, why should I? I mean, how can I be emotionally invested in characters if the writer of those characters is not emotionally invested in them? That to me is a difference. It's also very subjective. I mean, I could be reading a book feeling that it's detached from any emotional resonance, and someone else can be weeping over it. So maybe that's a personal.
And I can think of the opposite too, where the creator, or again, it's the director or the author. In this case, the director is just too sweet.
Are you talking about this new series on HBO?
No, I think that new series, that creator, his name is Stephen Conrad. He's a little bit unkind. His satire is a little too harsh, and I would even argue unrealistic. But the director I have in mind is Wes Anderson.
All right, Wes Anderson.
I think he's a little too sweet to his characters. The happy goody two shoes endings I find very annoying. I've walked out of 3 of his films. I cannot face the screen.
I would defend him in a weird way. I would defend him insofar as they're not real characters. There's nothing real in Wes Anderson. So it's hard to be emotionally invested in them, and it's hard to take them seriously. So to me, and I've always argued this about Wes Anderson, to me, he's not a film director. He's an art director. So he doesn't direct films. He designs them. He art directs them.
I think that's fair. What you're reacting to is how someone's dressed.
How symmetrical.
Almost all the time. Almost all the time.
Yeah, he's a snazzy dresser and all of his character. It's to me, it's totally style over content. People love him for that. It's like a painter you really like, I suppose. I find his work kind of emotionally stunted, enervating, not interesting. I don't find there's nothing to get me into those films, but my children love them. My wife and children love his films.
I mean, you come across these Wes Anderson fans, and watch out. It's almost it's almost like a cult. You could get canceled for not liking it.
Here in London, there is an exhibit of his work at the Design Museum, and I wouldn't mind seeing it, because that's probably a good place for his work, because he's an art designer. I mean, anyway, this sort of setup.
Not to take this digression too far, but he's also. Do you ever have someone, a director or an author you just love, and then they just disappoint and disappoint and disappoint? It's very frustrating.
Well, you and I really liked his first film, remember?
Bottle Rocket, terrific.
Lovely. And then Rushmore, I was kind of still with him, and then I lost him.
Rushmore, terrific. I liked the Fabulous Tannenbaums, whatever it was
Oh,
called.
yeah, you like that more than
I
do.
liked it
That's
more
very
than you
annoying.
did, but Sweet Mother of God, after that, it was all downhill for decades. He failed
Yeah,
up. Meanwhile,
again,
Paul Thomas Anderson, I had an opposite reaction with him. I didn't love his first two films. They were a little
he's
too
getting stronger and stronger.
a little too showy for me, but his career is just built, and what a great.
Yeah.
Can I say this word? Can I say this word?
What's the word?
Oeuvre.
Oeuvre. All right. Yes, you can say that word. That's
Okay.
not offending. That's not offensive, as long as you pronounce it correctly. Yes, his oeuvre is very uplifting, or it's impressive. I like P.T. Anderson. Let's get back to Lost
Oh,
Lamb.
I meant to say something else. My oeuvre is kind of like inflamed, and I kind of think I have to get some ice and put some ice on my oeuvre.
Oh, all right. Do you think Lost Lambs make a good film or series? Maybe a series.
You know what we could do is fan cast it. You want to fan cast it?
You'd probably be better at this than I am. How would you?
Okay,
cast
I think I have. Look,
given this
I'm
some thought
cheating. I'm
already.
cheating because Antonia and I fan cast it already, but I think we
Oh,
nailed
great.
it for the dad, whose name is Bud, the father. Think of an actor, 30-ish, 40-ish, who's down on his luck a lot, likable, and I think we'd all agree it should be Jay Duplass. Jay Duplass, we've seen in TV shows like The Chair, or name another Jay. He was in Transparent. He had a great role as Joshy, the brother in Transparent.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm sorry. I'm trying to picture him. What about the mother? What's her name in the book? Dorothy. That's not her name.
Well, having just finished DTF St. Louis, is her name Lisa Cardinelli?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
She'd be a great.
She wants to be very pretty, and
Yep.
that's a good-looking actress. Okay, good casting. And the three daughters. That's tough.
Harper is Lisa Simpson. Yeah, well, that doesn't work. Okay.
It's good. But that situates her. What about Mr. Alabaster, the Bond villain? Who would you see in that role?
Oh, right. We need a sinister actor. Who's good at sinister? Oh, Sarsgaard. No, too old. Peter Sarsgaard, maybe.
I don't know if is he that sinister? I mean,
he always plays weird characters, and he's a much better actor than that. He's
John
one of my favorite actors.
John Malkovich, he was a little younger, maybe.
When he was younger, yes. There's a terrific actor who was in 28 Years Later, and he was also in Sinners. His name is, I think, Paul Cox. He's this blonde-haired English actor who plays scary psychopaths, and he might be perfect.
He was out of the box casting. I would cast John Hamm, but maybe he's too sympathetic. But I think he could do anything, so I'm just a big John
he can do everything, and he actually would be great in that role.
I think he'd be pretty good. He'd be pretty funny, and maybe funny, too sympathetic. But it is a funny character. There are no deadly serious characters in this book. Every character is pretty funny. That was one of the things I liked about it. I could see John Hamm in that role.
You could have a lot of fun casting this as an academic exercise, or even a professional exercise someday, because word is on the street that she has gotten some offers. So we may see Lost Lambs someday streaming somewhere at a TV near you.
Yes, absolutely. Is that, by the way, when you read books, do you picture the actors and the roles? Do you cast it as you're reading it? I don't.
It depends on the book.
Plays I do, but not books so much.
It depends on the book. I think the first time I ever did that, I was reading the book "Thank You for Smoking" by Chris Buckley.
Oh yeah,
a decades-old book.
And that was filmed, I think. That was
definitely a comic novel and a great satire on Washington and the tobacco industry. And I saw people like John Candy in that role, or any of the early SNL alumni.
Wasn't that made into a film?
And it failed. It was because
it wasn't cast. You didn't cast it. You should have cast it. It maybe would have been better.
I should have. I would have rewritten the screenplay. They made it a little too serious because smoking in those days was serious.
Satire.
How naive we were.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, satire is maybe a difficult sensibility to pull off on film. Yeah, there's another question. So, what's a good satirical film, and not like National Lampoon, but something that has edge to it? I guess MASH would be the kind of standard bearer. The film MASH, not the TV series. They're films that are intelligent.
Would you call One Battle After Another a super satire?
Boy, that's such a good question, because I thought it wasn't until I rethought my feelings about Sean Penn's performance in that film. I thought he was too over the top. And then I thought, well, he must have been what P.T. Anderson wanted, because he directed him to act that way. And I guess my impression, my feelings about Sean Penn, and that was my entry point into rethinking that film as a satire. I was based on Thomas Pynchon, which was a satire. The Vineland, which I haven't read, but I mean, Pynchon writes satire. So I guess yeah, but that you could watch that film without realizing it was a satire, and maybe parts of it aren't. What were your feelings?
I mean, I think also maybe this is where the boomers have an advantage. When you see a film like that, it reminds you of sort of the violent political uprisings that we saw in the late 60s, early 70s. There were the name a few, Symbionese Liberation Army.
Yes, and that's when that's the period that the book is set in, and the film moved the setting up 20 or 30 years to bring it to the present day.
Right.
Yeah, it's clearly has echoes of Symbionese. There's another boomer reference, the Symbionese Liberation Army. Is that right? And that was Patty Hearst involved in that.
The Weather Underground. Boomers, how's that sound? How's that feel to you? Feel familiar?
Yeah, Thomas Pynchon is very much a boomerist, a novelist. P.T. Anderson is just skirts in as a boomer. He's 1 or 2 years younger than us, a couple of years. He's about our age, really. He would probably have the same cultural references that we have, but maybe for the sake of a commercial film, he wanted to make it more, to update it to the present time, to make it more pertinent to a younger audience. Is that fair? Rather than to make it historical. And actually, by the time the film came out, when the film was made, there was no definite sense that Trump would be reelected. By the time the film came out, it seemed to echo what was going on in the culture. And so the scenes of raiding the immigration sort of holding pen, or whatever you want to call it, seemed awfully ripped out of the headlines. Didn't you feel that way? There was a
I absolutely did feel that way.
I can use that word to that. You felt it. I saw it in a movie theater. You really felt the audience responding to something that was happening, kind of in the news in real time. Anderson had no way of knowing that would be the case. So I would argue it wasn't meant to be I don't think it was meant to be as political a film as it turned out to be for a lot of people. That's fair.
That's interesting. And someone had to make the conscious decision to retain that footage.
Which footage?
Of raiding the detention center.
Well, I didn't know why you wouldn't. Why would you take that out?
I don't know. Maybe
what kind
too
of
on the nose.
Are you anyway?
Too on the nose. Huh?
What kind of producer are you? Anderson, take out that sequence. It's too political.
Anderson might have said that. Maybe he said, I didn't think that we'd have ICE invasion in our cities.
No.
This was intended for to foresee the future after 2020 or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right. I think that's right.
I mean, they removed a scene from the first Spider-Man film, which took place between the World Trade Center buildings.
What did
they removed that whole scene, and it delayed the release of the first Spider-Man.
Because you saw the World Trade Center in the background, or what happened?
They were actually using, these superheroes were using as launching pads to fight each other in the air.
I can understand that. That it's too emotionally raw at that point. Even now, I don't think you could possibly set anything in the World Trade Center now as a historical structure.
Depends on how old you are.
I don't think so. I think why? How could you use it? How could you use the World Trade Center in a film scene without?
Only by my reactions. We were rewatching Sex and the City, and there are a lot of skyline shots that show the World Trade Center, and I look at it and I gasp.
Yeah, but that's true for so many films. It was part of the New York skyline. So any film that showed the New York skyline would show the World Trade Center.
Well, my point is there maybe someone 30 years old would see that skyline and just wait for it to pass so they could go into the next sequence. But people of a certain age, hint,
I understand that.
us.
My point is you wouldn't make a new film that set a scene consciously, at the World Trade Center or in front of a recreated World Trade Center, unless it was about.
It would be intentionally provocative. Yes, it would be intentionally provocative.
It'd be totally distracting. I wonder if people felt that way about the Empire State Building in 1933 when they went to the movies and saw King Kong climbing up the edge of it. This was a brand new building at that point. It just opened like 2 years earlier. And it took this world famous iconic structure, which was the tallest building in the world, and had a huge gorilla climb up, carrying poor little Fay Ray in one of his palms. And I don't think that traumatized the Empire State Building for people. But of course, it wasn't torn down. King Kong very thoughtfully did not tear down that building.
Do you think it was a product placement for the property owners?
I'm sure they were very happy to see it in the movie. Most of the building was not rented out for decades. It was conceived and first built before the Depression, I think, and then opened in time for no one having any money to take a much new.
Just like today.
Yeah,
I think the vacancy rates have improved in the Empire State Building, but around the pandemic, boy,
the World Trade Center was never completely full. That was why they gave the top floor to artists. That was never fully rented out. It was too much square footage.
When did they give the top floor to artists? I thought Cantor Fitzgerald and Windows on the World had the top floor.
One of the top floors.
Unless you think the people at Cantor Fitzgerald are artists. Maybe that's what you think, financial artists.
One of the highest floors was a raw space that artists were allowed to use. It was their studios. A couple of artists were killed because they were working overnight in their studios. You can look that up. I don't know what floor it was. You're right about Cantor Fitzgerald, but it was one of the highest floors. Was a completely raw space that artists had, I believe. So I don't think that either of those buildings were completely rented out. Wow, this is a huge diversion here into architectural history, film history, and property.
And you're so knowledgeable.
Yeah, I recommend people look these things up just to make sure I'm not completely making it up. But I think I'm right. Who knows? Who knows? Give our listeners and viewers something to do. So, would you recommend Lost Lambs? Getting back to our book of the week.
Oh, I think it's a terrific, fun read. Again, in the spirit of the book, it's a comic novel. Let's not overthink this. It's just a lot of fun. It's a literary experience that will make you laugh out loud.
I love that.
And it's something you can do with your time that doesn't involve, streaming or something else.
It's not too big, too. It's not a 500, 600-page novel. I think novels are sometimes too long. Films are too long. I can't watch 3-hour films anymore. Give me a 90-minute movie. Even that will take me a couple days to get through. Yes, we are recommending Lost Lambs. We both really enjoyed it, and I liked what you said. Don't overthink it. Just enjoy it. It's a funny book, but it does speak to our times. I think that's fair.
And now, are we at that time in the podcast where we do our head quakes?
I think we are.
Do we have a sound effect that could sound like a earthquake? No, very good.
See how annoying that is.
I think you have a new headquake.
I
And
do. I do.
why don't we hear it?
I have a little intro to my headquake. So I was thinking about this. A lot of folks will remember, maybe with some trauma, the first time they witnessed their mother or father drop a live lobster in a vat of boiling water.
Jesus,
I certainly do.
sweet mother of God.
When I was 5. My older sister and I were vacationing with our parents on Cape Cod, and our parents made the mistake of letting us play with one of the live lobsters, which we did, and named it Mo. We should have named it Curly because it didn't have any hair, but we named it Mo. We were playing with it, and suddenly my father picked it up and dropped it in this vat of boiling water. I mean, I was traumatized. I really was. Not too traumatized not to eat Mo. I should point that out, that I've never lost a love for eating crustaceans, and I'm a big fan to this day of shellfish. But in the UK, just recently, the shellfish family have been officially recognized as sentient beings, meaning they have to be killed with kindness. Humanely. That's a much better. Yes, humanely, not with kindness. Humanely.
That would mean you would buy Mo a box of chocolates. That would be killing with kindness.
Yeah, or you'd let them die of old age. But that could be. I don't know how long lobsters live, but it could be a wait. It's not just lobsters. It's clams and prawns, octopi. That makes total sense. They are some of the smartest, among the smartest animals in the animal kingdom.
Remind us, what is a prawn again? For those of us living in the United States.
Sorry,
we don't say
shrimp.
Such words.
Shrimp. Like little people. Shrimp. Lobsters, clams, shrimp, octopi are all sentient beings. The UK, they have to be, I think, like killed with a stun gun or something. I don't know how you kill a prawn with a shrimp with a stun gun, but lobsters, and it's going to make restaurant orders a bit more complicated, and it's going to open up a can of worms, if not a can of prawns.
I would think it would raise the price of something like shrimp salad, for example, because to individually kill each shrimp, that's a lot a lot of employee time.
Yeah, I think there's a loophole. Like there's always a loophole. The loophole is if it's imported shrimp, I don't think it has to. It can be killed in any way. This other country, but that means you will be less likely to get a fresh lobster. That's the point. You're less likely to get fresh lobster, and you're less likely to get a humanely killed lobster at a fancy restaurant. They might import it from France or Tunisia or someplace, Cape Cod, Maine lobster, where they just dump it in a vat of boiling water. But by that time, it won't be very fresh. Anyway, I thought that was really interesting. I thought, this is a country that cares a lot about its wildlife. I live in a part of London that is very dog heavy, if not dog friendly, very dog friendly. A lot of grooming. Stores and pet shops. A lot of places, a lot of vets. I was in Paris recently. I hardly saw any dogs, and I certainly saw no pet grooming establishments. I didn't see any vets. Anyway, that's England having an emotional attachment to its sentient beings of lobsters and co.
Well done, UK. Such humanitarians.
Yeah, I think so. It took quite a few years for this law to I don't know when it's exactly going into effect. This has been a process. Do you have a headquake for us, Jim, today?
Yeah, it's the same headquake as before. It's the author Lionel Shriver, who is female. If you're wondering why she has a traditionally male name, she actually changed it around age 15. She was born Margaret Ann Shriver, but felt that Lionel suited her tomboyish and unconventional personality, which I find annoying. But the background of her books is that they're provocative and very hard hitting. The most often cited is something called We Need to Talk About Kevin, which is an epistolary novel
Made into a
meaning,
film.
yeah, meaning it's told through letter writing, and the protagonist composing letters to her ex-husband and reflecting on their son who has committed mass murder at his school. But she's really known in the literary world for being a vocal critic of identity politics.
She's very anti-woke.
Very
Proudly anti-woke.
anti-woke, very anti-woke. And look, everything in its time. She stirred up a controversy at the Brisbane Writers Festival, defending a writer's right to write from any perspective, regardless of gender, race, sexual orientation, which has made her pretty polarizing.
I'm with her on that.
She made that defense in Brisbane at the conference while wearing a sombrero. Hardy har har. Anyway, she has a new
press for that. I mean, that is amazing. One sombrero brought her so much ink, or digital ink. Yeah, I find her very annoying, even if I actually agree with her on some of these issues. I think anyone should be able to create art about anything, and either it works or it doesn't. Either it's good or it's not. I don't think.
And I wish that had been more of her point. But unfortunately, she's taken on this persona where she's flattering people on the right and conservatives who still have this paranoia about being canceled. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, if you're male and you cis male, let's say, and you write from the point of view of a female, or you take a risk and you either win your reader over or not. I wish she had said that instead of calling everybody wrong.
Well, because I think
doing that now.
She's as much about owning the libs as she is about making a statement about the sort of freedom of art, the freedom of expression. That's why I find her kind of annoying. I think you can make some of the points that she's been making in a much more considerate manner without trying to offend people or annoy people. But I mean, it works in her favor. It works in her favor also because at least here in England, and she lives here in England, she's an American writer who lives in England, and she has found there's a huge, as there is in America, I guess, but I think more so here, there's a huge right-wing industrial complex for right-wing, writers on the right, journalists on the right. They have the Telegraph, they have the Daily Mail, they've got the Spectator, they've got Sky News, GB News. They have and she appears on all of these venues. There's more on the right than there is on the left. There's the Guardian on the left. There's the Independent, which isn't even a print newspaper anymore. So I think she has an easy audience, and she's learned that you could. Well, as a lot of people on the right have learned, if you offend, you can be offensive and you get all this extra coverage. Maybe we should take a leaf out of it. Should we be more offensive and get some more attention? We're not offensive enough.
You know what? Just in case you want to know that this isn't 2019, I think that's when she really was at the height of her controversy. She has a new book, and this is why it quakes my head. Her new novel is called Mania. It released in late 25. Where she creates no, that's not Mania. Her new book is called, that's the 2025 book. Her new book is called A Better Life, and it follows Gloria, a well-meaning caricature of a liberal in Brooklyn who joins a city program to house migrants in her own home, and all hell breaks loose. It's very unflattering to the people who she houses. It's a ham-handed statement about migratory politics in our cities. Why now?
It sounds as if this does not pass my test of being empathetic about your own characters. She sounds quite critical and making fun of these characters. I guess it sounds a bit cartoony. I haven't read the book, but I've read some reviews of it. I think she plugs into the anti-immigrant feelings of people on the right. There's a lot of anti-immigration sentiment from the Reform Party, Nigel Farage here in the UK. It's a huge subject. So she.
You have to wonder whether she'll win over readers. I mean, do people who have those kinds of, dare I say, odious opinions actually read literary fiction? Is someone who's going to say, I told you so about ICE. I told you so about migrants. Here, I'm going to run out and buy this novel and read it. Is that
Well,
actually going to happen?
I think that's a good point. She's not out to change anyone's mind. She's out to echo people who just already agree with her, I guess.
I think it's a novel length op-ed, as
well, it's been described
in the Atlantic Monthly. Yeah, go on.
Exactly how it's been described. Even I think the Spectator, which I read, which she has a column in the Spectator. I think they called it as an op-ed piece dressed up as a novel. So maybe she is losing some of her own audience for that. I don't know what her sales figures are. She sounds very prolific. If you said the Mania was her book from 2025 and she already has a new novel, she's certainly putting them out there.
She is prolific, but sometimes what happens with prolific novelists is that they write novels that sound and read like prolific novels. Anyway, and just for the sake of our U.S. listeners, The Spectator is a leaning right publication that I happen to also really appreciate, if not in practice, but in its intellectual rigor. They bring in a lot of interesting authors and different voices to challenge people of liberal or left sentiment.
Yeah, that's being a little generous. I read it because my father-in-law subscribes to it, and he gives me his old issues, and I read it for the reviews. I swear, it's a bit like saying you used to read. I read Playboy just for the articles, but
I read the New York Post for the sports coverage.
Right, I don't read the political coverage. The political stuff of the Spectator always bugs me a little bit, but I read it. But it has very good arts coverage, and the columnists can be. They have one of the columnists is Boris Johnson's sister has a column in her in the magazine. I guess it's all families.
Sweet mother of God, what could she possibly look like? Do they have the same hair?
They do. She looks exactly like what you'd expect her to look like. She looks like Boris Johnson with longer blonde hair and bangs. She's got bangs.
There's a Monty Python skit out there.
Yeah, that could be. Good. I think those are good earthquakes.
Good. Should we move on to our sponsor?
Yes, please. I think we have a new sponsor. Is that right?
That's right. And this is good news because it means that we've reached a critical mass in our listenership, enough to
about time.
Enough to attract a sponsor, a Fortune 500 company example in particular.
That's exciting news.
We're achieving our objective of monetizing our cultural and society podcast. Monetize, people. We're monetizing. That's what we like to do, is monetize.
I love that word.
That's such a great word. Shall I do it or shall you?
You got the sponsor. You tell us.
It wasn't easy, by the way. Here it goes. This episode is sponsored by Palantir Technologies. Did you know that Palantir isn't just a pernicious and omnipresent military logistics and surveillance company? It's also a friendly, super nice organization that will deliver a new puppy to your home for as little as $2.99. That's right. A new baby puppy or baby duck, depending on your preference. Just write a letter in cursive, making a blood oath to President Trump, and that puppy or aquatic bird will be delivered to your home in a box with air holes punched into the side so it won't suffocate. Use promo code LEGITGIFT to receive your delightful companion animal. That's promo code LEGITGIFT, LEGITGIFT, LEGITGIFT.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Palantir. And thank you, Jim, for bringing in that major corporate sponsor. We could use it. Okay, good. All right. Well, that's all we have for this week. We hope you've enjoyed Boomer Has It. I'm JB Miller in London.
I'm Jim Jalamas in Brooklyn.
Bye.